the TEFL Commute, Season 4, Episode 5, in which Sean and I delve into the world of music. This will be the first part of a two-part episode. Let's get going.
Lindsay, I have to start like this. Close your eyes, pick up a pen.
Oh gosh, okay. What are you doing?
It was just music because we're talking about music and visualize. And last time you were being so complimentary about visualization, it reminded me of one of the ways I use music in the classroom is guided visualization. So I thought, no, let's get Lindsay to close his eyes and play some music to begin with.
That's true. Let me also begin the episode with an apology to people who are fans of visualization, including one person I know who did her PhD on it and makes very good arguments for using guided visualization in class as a motivational tool. That's Jessica McKay. A little shout out to her. And I am willing to admit that I may be wrong in my bias against this technique.
But they were pet peeves, weren't they? So, you know, but you know what? It was nice to see so much reaction to our peeves. Time, if we do it next season, if we have a recap, we'll have to get people to send in their pet peeves, then we can try and please everybody. So.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to the TEFL Commute, everybody. My name is Lindsay Clanfield. I'm joined here with...
Hi, I'm Sean Wilden.
And this is a podcast for language teachers. That's not about language teaching, but the topic will come up sometimes, invariably.
Which we still insist on saying, yet every time we talk, we now talk about teaching. But there you go.
Yeah. Well, today we are talking about teaching, but the topic that we've been wanting to deal with a while on this podcast is such a big topic that we've decided to do it over 2 episodes, and that's the whole area of music and songs. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk today in this episode about music. So not songs so much as just music in general and its role or not in ELT, in teaching, how we feel about it, and whether or not we use music in class. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about more about songs, including things like everyone's favorite ELT, teaching English songs, why songs in course books are so horrible, and more stuff. Sound okay, Sean?
Well, now you've just said why songs in course books are so horrible, so you're probably going to get a tirade of complaints again from course book writers. But
I doubt it. But anyway.
Let's get going. Lindsay, are you a fan of the science of developing different non-manipulative and non-hypnotic methods for teaching of foreign languages?
Sorry. Did you say something there?
I was just looking at the definition of a teaching approach or method, whichever way you want to call it, which tends to use music.
Let me guess what this is. Is this one that has 2 ways of spelling what it is?
Oh, is there 2 ways of spelling it?
Isn't it like encyclopedia has 2 spellings?
Okay. I don't know. I've only ever spelt it one way, but I guess the pedia part says you're on in the right direction.
Listeners, we are talking about, of course, the famous Suggestopedia, also sometimes called de-Suggestopedia. So there may be, in fact, 4 spellings of this method of language teaching. And I know a little bit about it, obviously, from teacher training and reading and stuff. Sean, do you want to tell us a bit more?
Well, yes, I know a bit about it. I've observed it, but I've never actually done it. I would have thought you talking about more about it. You probably don't like it, I think, because it's got a lot of. When you look at the definition, there's a lot of guided in it, guided relaxation, guided this. I mean, given
might not be my thing. It was developed.
Georgi Lazanov, yeah.
Yeah, by Georgi Lozanov.
Sorry.
A Bulgarian psychotherapist. So not, I guess he must have been a teacher as well, but a psychotherapist by profession. So, and it used music as a way of helping learn languages. But there was more than just that. Do you want to walk us through some of the Suggestopedia stuff?
Well, there's two sides of it, aren't there? There's the active and the passive side of it. it's all about kind of getting in a relaxed state before the teacher basically reads texts.
Yes. I mean, a lot of it is that. Of course, fans of this or people who know a lot about this will be outraged that we are glossing over it. I think there are more stages than just the listening to music stages. I think there is times where lots of it is based on text that the students have to read and then listen to. But the main part that's often talked about and what's of concern to us here on this podcast is the role of music. And those are used in what's called the concert sessions. Yeah, so the concert sessions, I think there were two, the active concert and the passive concert. Do you want me to keep going, Sean, or do you want?
You keep going for a second, and I'll see what I can add.
All right. Well, so the way that I've understood it and read about it and seen it is there's the active session is where a teacher is reading the text by some music. This is almost always classical music. And this could be like a familiar classical piece, like Beethoven or something like that, a symphony, and the students follow along. So the teacher reads it out, and the students following along. And then later on, there's another concert, the passive concert, where this is more Baroque music playing with 60 beats per minute and a specific rhythm to create a relaxed state of mind to allow the materials to be retained. And in the passive concert, which is what people imagine when they imagine Suggestipedia, I think, students are preferably sitting in comfortable chairs.
It's a comfortable chair bit, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe closing their eyes, and the teacher is rereading the same text or passage. So the passive concert is where it's really supposed to go into the subconscious, as opposed to the active concert where you're kind of reading and following along. Then there are parts, I think, where students also read the text and focus on the language and translations. But it's the concepts that really kind of distinguish it as a method.
Yeah, obviously we're focusing on the music side of it, but it is equally important that the atmosphere as a whole is described as comfortable and relaxing in order for people to take the suggestion, I guess.
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but my father was a French professor.
Oh, really? I didn't know. No, you haven't.
At the University of Toronto back in the 1970s. And he said they did, in fact, try Suggestipedia. When it came out, they tried it. He said they spent a fortune on furniture. And in the end, those were put into the staff rooms. And
I guess the average classroom chair doesn't really work for it, does it? So
no, well, back in the day, they would have, if they're going whole hog for it, they would have been spending money on this, just like now we spend money on iPads, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess. It's I mean, it is interesting. There are, and we'll put some links on the website, of course, but there are some lessons that you could observe of it on YouTube or people trying it out for it. And we were just talking, Delta, people doing the Cambridge Delta who often do experimental practice on Suggestipedia lessons. So there's obviously, it is a technique that people are still involved with. But for us, it's the musical side that is the interesting part, isn't it? It's the use of classical music basically to set a classroom atmosphere.
And there is an argument. There's been a very kind of frequent argument made of the benefits of classical music for learning and memory retention. I noticed you had put something in your notes here called the Mozart effect. Do you want to tell?
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it's separate from that, but there is this. I don't know if you remember. It was probably a decade or so ago now that people suddenly started grasping onto this idea that playing Mozart would increase learning opportunities and make people better learners. In fact, from a language point of view, it's total bunkum. Apparently,
really?
Yeah. There's no proof to say that it actually worked from a language point of view. It was one of these things. It was sort of grasped by, or the research was grasped by marketeers, and as media does spin these things out of it. So everybody was playing Mozart.
I have a confession time here. I fell for the Mozart effect and bought the video cassettes, Baby Mozart, Baby Van Gogh, and everything when my kids were small.
I have to say that I've played Baby Mozart to my child as well. Yes, but that's more as in not necessarily that Mozart would be developing his language ability, but but because they are actually very relaxing, and they do.
And actually, they're quite funny. I like them as well. But I never really went for the whole scientific argument they would make in the blurbs on the videos. But the videos themselves were pretty good.
Yeah. So the positive results that were attributed to the Mozart effect are more in the raising energy and giving positive emotional qualities within a learning space, rather than any noticeable effects on IQ or the ability to learn language. But that said, I mean, I like classical. I'm a big fan of music and song in the classroom, and I've often played classical music in the classroom, and I do think it does have an ability to create a positive atmosphere for it. What about you? I mean, I often, when I'm writing material, I often play classical music.
Then here's a question. Then okay, let's start with that question, because there's two separate things. One is, actually, before we do this, why don't we take a little Suggestipedia break? And when we come back, we'll talk about music in our life and our teaching.
Okay, deep breaths, relax.
Closing my eyes.
I am Thornton Thunder. I am from Thurso. At the farthest point north in Scotland, I'm a jack of all trades.
That's better. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. All right. Suggest something to me.
I'm all energized for it. There's something to be said about this. I feel almost motivated.
Almost motivated.
So we were talking before the break about music and the Mozart effect and Suggestipedia and whether or not that was true or not. I wanted to bring it back to like personal questions for you, and also thinking about listeners. The idea of studying, or in yours, in my case now, writing to music. Your thoughts when you were, for example, Sean, when you were at university or in high school, did you study to music with music in the background?
Songs rather than music, but yes, and I could still attribute some of the things I remember to songs.
What kind of music, though? So was it pop songs, or was
pretty much, yeah, whatever was the of the day. Back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So it's kind of.
I could never study to music that had words coming with it.
I think it comes for me. It comes from the fact I don't actually like silence very much. I like, and it's something that people always get at me. I can't work in silence. I can't study in silence. I need a noise for it.
And so music, even with lyrics, didn't distract you?
No, but I think I tune them out more than anything else, and I do it now. I mean, now I actually find that as I've moved from kind of teaching into writing more, that I actually need to have. I've moved from songs into the classical music. I listen to a lot of opera when I'm writing, because I just find it a really good accompaniment to it. So.
When I studied, I could not study with lyrical music in the background. I could with classical music a little bit, and when I write, no, that's complete silence. Yeah.
But it's a personality, and I think this is one of the issues with music in the classroom. Actually, is this? There's a lot of this idea of I'll play music, but of course, if you've got a large class, there's bound to be that kind of division that you and I are showing. I like the noise, you like the silence. So if you're playing music, then you are possibly annoying some of your students who are finding it difficult to study.
So when would you, if that's the case, then just the two of us, one of us can't concentrate with music and the other one can't concentrate unless there's music or sound. it's almost like there's a no-win for teachers with like a variety of people in the class.
There's a couple of things that I would do. First of all, I'd find out very early in my course what the students' attitudes were to it, and do a little, not experiment as such, but play some music, get some feedback, see what people like with it. And we're talking about music rather than songs here. Find out what the general consensus of the class was to it. And of course, like anything, I think there's a time and a place. And I think where playing music is particularly effective is to give a background to, say, an extended speaking activity. I think, the music, when we speak in real life, there's often a lot of background noise. And I think actually the fact there's music playing gives the students almost like a security blanket, that they can speak within this bubble of noise. So exactly. It makes them less afraid.
I would add also, because I do this often in role plays where we have music playing in the background, I would add that it serves another purpose of bringing the role play to a stop more easily.
Yes.
So you have the music, like, they're all role playing, meeting at a party, for example, or in a restaurant or whatever, and you have the music playing in the background. But then when you stop the music, you can sometimes get that natural thing that happens, for example, at a party, when suddenly the music stops at a party and everyone just stops talking at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is actually quite a good use of music in the classroom as a teacher tool almost. Rather than like the 2 minutes left, 1 minute left. You just like the music. The music is the punctuation of the activity. So I think in that sense that there's kind of I've got music on all the time, but you're using it for a particular purpose, which you can tell the students you're using it for, and it's they're not trying to sit and do a piece of writing. Although again, that's another use of music, isn't it? I mean, music could be used to as a cue for creative writing, rather like the guided visualization. Yeah.
It could be, but again, my feeling is, and this is more personal, when I've used music for things in class, either for background music or for creative writing prompts or things like that, I rarely have music which has lyrics.
No, of course, I mean, there's music. No, I think when we get to when we move on this kind of into part 2 of this podcast, we'll talk about the difference of using songs as the background music. And when here I'm talking purely instrumental music or very, very light lyric music that is more about the instrument for it. Because I mean, I actually when I was thinking about the importance of music for me as a teacher, and I think very early in my career I was influenced by a book which is really hard to get hold of now, which is called Musical Openings. It was one of those Pilgrim's training resource books by I think it was Kramer.
Tell us about that. I remember.
I was just really interesting because it was more playing on the thing.
English language teachers, right?
Say again.
This book, Musical Openings, was for English language teachers.
That's right. Yeah. It was one of those what we call a recipe book, that just gave you different ideas for, and it came with a cassette. That's how old it was. It came with a cassette and they were snippets of classical music. So there were different activities built around various activities of classical music. And the one that sticks in my mind, and I still do from time to time, is putting together snippets of classical music, but of different tempos and different moods, but almost like mixing them together so it's one track. So the music will abruptly change, and getting the students to pick up a pen and then they write to the music. And then, of course, as the music changes, the story should change. So perhaps you've got a more energetic piece, like the 1812 overture or something, followed by, the rites of the, and it's really interesting to see the work the students produce just as a creative cue, and this book was full of those. It even had it had things you hate, visualization activities, and kind of suggested activities in terms of relaxing the students to pieces of music. Students drawing circles.
Let's give a plug to that. Then I've just got it in front of me here. I think it's probably out of print.
Very much so. I think you can get a secondhand copy off Amazon. But I did look because it did remind me of it, and then realised that it was missing from my library of books of teaching
Yeah.
books. But so
called Musical Openings by
is it
David
Kramer?
Kramer
I
and
was right.
Clement Leroy.
Yeah, but see, Clement Leroy went on to also write books on pronunciation. So that's interesting. Whether this connection that some people make between language and between language learning and music. And there's this idea of pronunciation and music and phonology and music. But maybe we should take another Suggestopedia break and talk about that after that. So, Lindsay, do you think there is anything in music making you a better language learner?
I'm trying to think of when I learned Spanish or French, the other two languages I speak quite fluently, or a little bit of German that I've learned. I've never found music to play that big a role. Songs, perhaps.
Right.
More so with songs than with music. There's the whole argument of the music of English, but then I've heard people make the argument of the music of whatever language. So whatever your language is, I think maybe there's a natural kind of thing to say, so our language has a certain music to it, a cadence, a sort of, sometimes said about English pronunciation being stress timed rather than syllable timed. So it has a particular kind of music to the language, but it hasn't played a conscious big role in my life. And you?
No. I think the idea, not me personally, but I think there might be something that people talk about an ear for music and an ear for languages. And I wonder if there is that connection. There isn't a lot of research on, available on the internet about it, how much that connection is, that, if you've got an ear for music, whether that therefore knocks onto to pronunciation. But certainly, I mean, I think the only way that music has really influenced me in terms of language is by helping learn language, like listening to songs and being able to sing parts of songs in the language I'm learning. But no, I guess songs, maybe we could talk more about pronunciation. But there was a study, I think I came across it I think it was Finnish, as these things tend to be when we talk about education, that kind of suggested that if children studied music from an early age, then that would have a knock-on effect in language learning, which I found very interesting. And
it was very interesting because when I was looking into music and language learning, or the importance of music or studies, a lot of this tends to be done in terms of teaching music at school and the importance of teaching and learning music at school, and how that with other learning, like holistically. So I thought that was interesting, although, it was often done by people who work in music departments and, very interested in proving that there's a good link between studying music and doing well in education in general. Just as all of us teaching languages are drawn to research that shows people who study and learn languages do better in other subjects as well. It's good for all kinds of learning.
Yes, I guess so. I mean, it's kind of self-justification research, isn't it? It's
but I do think there's something to be said for both of those kinds of, in both cases. I don't think that it's not true.
No, nor do I. But as you say, and when the research is very limited in this case, there's not a lot not a lot to go on. I think as we develop from music into songs, I think we'll probably come around more that songs have influenced our language learning much more than music itself.
I agree. Hey, I have one more question. This may be related more to like how using English to study, in our own quiet time, or using English in class. One thing that I've noticed in my son's school here, all of a sudden, I noticed that they changed the bell to music. And I started hearing this all across schools in the town where I live in Spain, that there's no longer the bell that announces the end of the school day or the end of the class period. It's now replaced by music. And I started researching this, and this is starting to happen in lots of schools. Across the States, they are also beginning to replace the bell with music. Have you heard this?
I haven't heard of this. No, it's interesting. And is there a reason for this?
Yeah, well, there's a few reasons. One is that the bell, the sort of like ding 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 ding, is also used in prisons, used in military stuff and everything, and so it was kind of considered, militaristic or dehumanizing. It's also loud and jarring, the bell, and they said it would make people more. Well, the hearsay arguments, is that it made the kids more kind of excited and nervous going into class.
Okay.
And it was an aggressive sound, whereas playing music could kind of gently guide everyone towards class or guide them out of class.
So this is it classical music that they play?
Well, and now the schools in my neighborhood, they started with classical, but now they're vary. So maybe they're playing like pop songs and stuff like that. And I think some of the high schools are varying because they're also getting the students to choose the song, the song that they want to kind of finish the day. But so things like Farrell, whatever his name's, Happy. I'm happy. You start hearing that.
It's indoctrination, so they're all going into class being happy.
There could be that kind of stuff as well. It was just interesting. A lot of them do the classical music, I think, partly to kind of like calms the savage beast of the children as they're all going into class. And I would have liked that. I always found there was nothing worse than being like involved as a teacher or a student in an activity, and everyone's kind of getting right into it, and all of a sudden you hear like ding 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 ding, or
yeah, but I could understand the reasons why the bell might be seen as in a negative way, but regardless of whether it's a bell or a piece of music, it's still the end of the activity, isn't it?
Well, that's true. Actually, you know what? One of the schools they had that was even worse. They had like an air raid thing, like, and I was, duck and cover, get down, everybody. I mean, the kids just had associated it with the end of class, but
it's interesting. So I wonder if there's a particular kind of. I was going right back to the beginning where we were talking about Suggestipedia and the active and the passive. I wonder if they've put that research into the bell. Do you put a bit of Bach in there, or do you put some Mozart in there, or my personal favorite, a bit of Tchaikovsky? I think it's in it. Do you have a favorite classical composer? Your favorite piece of classical music you would put on in class?
That I would put on in class would probably be some kind of Mozart, some kind of gentle Mozart thing, Pachelbel's Canon, something really typical, whatever's on the greatest hits.
Tchaikovsky is my plane music. If I'm trying to sleep on a plane, that's what I put on my generic MP3 player, as they often say.
I used to, for like quick type things when I was teaching kids that they had like to finish a puzzle or something like that, I used to put on Mission Impossible for the last 2 minutes of the thing. They had to speed up.
Do you think that pressures them?
It totally did. It totally did. So maybe that, I don't know if that was good or not.
Speaking of composers, let's see if you know your order of composers with this little game.
The return of the timeline.
Welcome to Timeline, the TEFL Commute's on-the-move game for teachers. Okay, in order to play Timeline, you need to draw yourself a mental timeline. We've all used timelines in the classroom. Get the pen, draw a line. Over here on the left is usually the past, moving towards the right it's the future, with somewhere with a little cross or an intersection for now in the middle. So draw yourself that mental timeline now. Great, so you're almost ready to play, so all you need now is a topic. And in keeping with today's episode, the topic is composers. That's right, composers. Lindsay and I have been discussing the use of classical music in Suggestipedia. So here are 6 composers associated with the active and passive concepts used in that approach. All you have to do is put them into the correct order according to their year of birth. So if you're ready, let's play Timeline. Here we go then. Remember, you're putting the composers in order of their date of birth or the year of birth. I'm going to give you them in alphabetical order. So here are your 6. Number 1 is Bach. Number 2, Beethoven. Our 3rd composer is Handel. Our 4th composer, Mozart. Next, Tchaikovsky. And to finish with, Vivaldi. So that's Bach, Beethoven, Handel, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, Vivaldi, in order of the year of birth. Thinking time. Okay, thinking time over. Do you think you've got them all? Once more in alphabetical order, Bach, Beethoven, Handel, Mozart, Tchaikovsky and Vivaldi. So when we get to the answers, you would give yourself 1 point if you get them in the correct order. 6 points earns you utter smugness. And it is tricky because there are 2 of the composers were born in the same year. So according to the Font of All Knowledge, Wikipedia, this is the order you should have put them in. Your first one, Vivaldi, year of birth, 1678. Second up should have been Handel. He was born in 1685, as was Bach. However, Handel was born about a month before Bach was. So, Handel was born in February 1685 and Bach was born in March 1685. Your 4th one should be Mozart, born in 1756, followed by Beethoven, 1770, and your final one is Tchaikovsky, born in 1840. So that's Vivaldi, Handel, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, and Tchaikovsky. Well done if you got them all in the right order. And join us again in a future podcast episode for another edition of Timeline. Did you get them all right, Lindsay?
No, I didn't. I got one of them wrong.
No, well, I had the answers and I still got them wrong. Let's. I guess we're kind of coming towards the end. We've looked at music per se, and of course, music itself is actually a good topic to talk about in classroom. There are so many questions that you can instigate
Some
with
of the questions
music
that we were kind of going back and forth with ourselves could be used.
Absolutely. I was coming when we were researching. I came across the TEFLpedia site with the music questions. So let's just do a couple of those for you. See how you see what your answers would be. So the first question on the TEFLpedia site is: how important is music in your life, Lindsay?
Not as important as it used to be. It's true. Music has become devalued in my life. That I'm not spending so much money on it because I'm streaming from Spotify and stuff like that. So
that's interesting that you think that's devalued it. It's kind of, for me, it uppers it up more to. I mean, you probably, since we're confessing things in a way, you probably don't realize that I used to be a DJ. So before I was a teacher, I was a DJ. So for me, things like Spotify, and I like seeing new music, and Spotify does that for me, hearing new music. But so I thought it's added more value rather than devalued it. That's interesting. Let's have a look then. If music were removed from the world, how would you feel?
Oh no, that would be awful. That would be terrible.
Because, as you say to your students, come on, expand your answer. You've got a minute.
Oh, gosh. I don't know, teacher. It would be terrible because I like music. I'm giving the kind of lame answer.
The lame answer the students give when you want them to know. Going down the list one more, Ted. Does it irritate you when someone is whistling?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Because I almost always think someone's whistling. If I hear someone continually whistling, I think they're doing it to try to annoy somebody. I don't know why.
Oh, really? I find myself doing it subconsciously.
I guess if I overheard someone walked past and someone was in a shower whistling, but when I hear someone whistling down the street, I kind of think I don't know. I think it. Anyway, yes, it does annoy me a little bit. Not enough to say to a stranger, "Please stop that." But probably, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And there are many more of these questions on the page. Well, I was going through them. I thought they were quite interesting because they're like that question about does it irritate you when someone is whistling, for example, is an interesting one to have a discussion about, I think, in class. Yeah. So we'll put them on the website for people to listen to. Have we got anything else to talk about?
I don't think so. Well, I have a lot to talk about, but it's more about songs, and maybe that we'll wait and we'll continue that in our next episode.
Okay. Should we end then with the sound, going to music, the sound of angels?
Oh, our favorite music.
Surround yourself with the dreamers and the doers, the believers and thinkers, but most of all, surround yourself with those who see greatness within you, even when you don't see it in yourself. Anonymous.
Right, so I guess that brings part 1 to an end. What do you think, Lindsay?
I think it does. This has been the TEFL Commute. My name is Lindsay Clanfield, joined by Sean Weldon. We were talking, this is a first of a two-parter that we're doing on music and song. So please check back in a couple of weeks' time. We'll have the next episode up. We try to do an episode every 2 weeks. You can find out more from our website, www.teflcommute.com, or follow us on Facebook or on Twitter. And you can get our podcasts anywhere you get your great podcasts, iTunes, Podomatic, anywhere else. You should be able to find it.
And you can even listen to them on YouTube if you wish. Yeah, don't forget to check the website. There is a lot of links and a lot of things that we talked about. As usual, we put all the links that we find during our research on there for you to go and research further. And always finish with an end of pod activity, and the instructions are there for you. So I've been Sean Wilden, and I'll see you again for part 2.
And I've been Lindsay Clanfield. Bye, everybody.
Bye for now.
As your commute is coming to an end, here's an activity you can take into class. Before your lesson, choose some short extracts of music. Lyric-free music works best. Choose extracts that have contrasting styles. You're going to need about a minute from each extract. You need at least 4. Begin your lesson by asking the students to close their eyes, just to annoy Lindsay, and listen to the piece of music. When the excerpt has finished, put the students into pairs and ask them to describe what images they saw in their minds when listening to the music. Then ask some of the students to tell the whole class. Next, ask the students to take a pen and paper. Tell them you're going to play some music, but this time they need to write a story inspired by the music. Play 1 minute of at least 3 extracts, and as the music plays, the students should write their story. Contrasting extracts, that is, slow, fast, should influence what happens in the story. When the music is finished, give students time to polish their writing before they share it in small groups. You can find the instructions for these activities at our website, www.teflcommute.com. You've been listening to the TEFL Commute, an original podcast produced and presented by Lindsay Clanfield, Sean Wilden and James Taylor. Don't miss out on any episodes by subscribing to us on iTunes and by visiting us at www.teflcommute.com.
I shall be leaving you now. But before I do, may I leave you with one last thought for the day? An individual's life is a process of transforming time into experience. A full, balanced, and happy life may then be one that transforms its time into a maximum of good experience.